All right, it is 8 o'clock. We're going to start the Redevelopment Authority meeting. It is November 1st, 2023, and we are in City Hall Council Chambers. Next item on the agenda is consider approval of the meeting minutes from October 4th, 2023.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from October 4th, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment? Last call for public comment. We'll move on to number 4 is consider resolution authorizing a development agreement by and between the City of Merrill, Wisconsin and Wendorf Construction LLC for residential development in TID number 7, East 10th Street, Spruce Street, TID number 7, information and development agreement with Wendorf Construction.
I had talked with Dave, and he's still working on some financing and some other details. At this point, we don't have a development agreement in place. I guess if Kathy doesn't have anything to add, probably ask to forward it to the next RDA meeting.
Okay. You got nothing else to add?
No.
All right, we'll just put it on the next, be the December meeting. Update on redevelopment plans for the Mathis Building and potential requests for City of Merrill assistance, 419 West Main Street, TID number 8.
And we have Stephanie
Stephanie,
Springborn.
yep, Stephanie Springborn is here. Stephanie, you want to step up to the podium, please?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me here and even for consideration for the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you have plans to, or were they in the?
They're in the packet.
They were in the
packet,
packet. Your packet contains a summary, which
Yep.
is kind of a little bit of a mock-up on the business plan I submitted or was starting to submit to financial institutions, and also in preparation for different granting opportunities outside the City of Merrill. Then there is the architectural drawings or diagrams. They're not fit for construction. I just want to forewarn you there. They're the same. They're done by Stacy Ness. He's the architect that worked on some prior plans I had for the building, and also the city of Wausau, the 400 block redevelopment, and then you also have a quote from Tim Finnegan of Finnegan Construction.
I didn't include that.
Oh, you did not?
No, I don't think that's relevant for
Oh.
open session.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So you have the diagram and, excuse me, and also the summary. I can talk forever on the building, but the proposed plan in front of you is for residential. And I apologize that it isn't architectural drawings. I certainly can show you an example of Stacy's work. Like I said, he comes very well recommended from the redevelopment processes from here in Merrill before. I've also contracted with Kristen Fish-Peterson of Redevelopment Resources in Madison, who did a lot of work for the City of Merrill about 10 years ago, who's very familiar with the City of Merrill, the building, and the process. I've put together a development team to handle some of these. I'm not a big contractor by any means. I love the building, and by trade, I'm a manager, and I've also been with the building and renovated it for 10 years now. And it has come across to me not only to develop it for commercial uses, primarily on the first floor to be a restaurant, a light restaurant, more like a coffee shop, art gallery. There's a similar venue in Mineral Point that does the same thing. And then also upstairs, early in October, the Lincoln County Development, Economic Development Office came to me and said that there are opportunities as far as funding for residential. And there's a big program now, even at the the federal government level to convert commercial properties into residentials. So that's why the second floor, although it was never something that I foresaw, at least for this building, I have been a landlord before. I have owned buildings and leased them out. It seems to be the profitable angle and also would answer community need. The first go around with Lincoln County Economic Development, we were looking at HUD programs, and this isn't necessarily slated to be meet the requirements of a HUD program. I wouldn't exclude that. The one funding opportunity that we were looking at that time, the deadline passed, but there are other lending or grant opportunities through HUD for that. I wouldn't necessarily slate it for a HUD type program, but I am very interested in having economic type apartments. It would not be my only source of income, so I don't look at it, and I never have looked at the building as something that would support me or that I would have to maximize profitability for. I just want to have a supplemental income, and also the goal was always to preserve the building and to have it be something that the community could be proud of and would use.
And you're mainly asking for the city to be a pass-through agent for potential federal and state grants?
That's correct. That's correct. That situation came up with the HUD grant, and as far as looking at the definitions of what I needed from the city in order to, we had worked through all the applications for the federal government and all the requirements, and then, learned that the applicant is actually the city and I would be the developer. And there are other examples where the city of Merrill has acted in that capacity for developers, and I would be asking for the same thing. And also to be considered for other possibilities.
When
But
have we done that in the past, Kathy?
We did it for Wine Runner in terms of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation's $250,000 idle site grant. So we've done this before as the pass-through agent.
Mhm.
What I really like about this is they're efficiency apartments. They're small, but
Yes.
something we don't really have right now.
Right.
And hopefully, by being a small apartment, the rent to be smaller also. Have you targeted
I
kind
have.
of rent? What kind
Yep.
of figures you looking
Mhm. I have. And again, I was trying to gear it towards HUD programs where they have the different income levels and things like that. But even outside of that, because it's what I was interested in too, I was looking at the studio apartments to be in the range of $600 to $700 a month. And that would include part of the focus, at least at the time, to be upfront about it. There seemed to be a need, and from what I heard of, that there's a need for a young adult, places for young adults to live and transition into adulthood.
I'd call it a desperate need.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, that's
So
part
part
of
of it
the
would be,
set.
yep, and part of it would be the inclusion, according to the contractor, in kind of the reality of it would be that the utilities would not be included in the rent, and that would be separate. However, part of the rent would be the inclusion of network and communication in that building too. So you'd have a carrier come in, and where Wi-Fi would be, they'd be equipped to handle the world. So I'm looking at 600-ish, if I could. And I've run different budgets for that. So 600, 650 for a studio, and then I think right around 800 for the one bedroom.
The downstairs.
The downstairs one is ADA compliant, and then there's 5 upstairs. And they'd all be priced the same.
Okay. I know that there's the question of parking. Did you discuss that with our city engineer, or where are you at that?
It's come up. The last answer that I have, and I don't want to speak out of turn, and I don't want to look at, because I know how, I don't want to say that this was a guarantee, because it wasn't, but this is what we kind of came up with, is that the municipal parking lot that's down the block, whether that be on the Main Street side or on the alley, kind of in that back side, that there.
Lincoln County Banquets.
Right, exactly. That there would be parking there by permit that would be available to my tenants to the residents there.
I would think parking would be needed there. With the dance studio and all that, that's gonna be full, and you're gonna need parking, so.
Right, right. I had looked at possibly talking to the dance studio about maybe leasing out some spaces from them, but I don't know if they had an open house or what they had the other day, and I looked at the cars and I thought, no, that's not.
I've seen their parking on Main Street in the past. And
Yep.
I don't believe that they'd be too receptive to that.
Right, right.
If Merrill would provide parking to you, would that be enough to satisfy our contribution to it? Or if we would possibly deed a parking lot to you, which would add value to your property, would that satisfy your need to get the project accomplished?
I don't think we're in the position to do that.
We own the lots.
Right, but those are municipal lots, and we need to keep them municipal lots for the other businesses up there also.
She was good with us leasing you spaces or renting spaces. That's kind of the agreement that we had.
Sure, yep.
We had talked about, so I think that fulfills your need for parking.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. And there's always, to look at it as the commercial part of it too. If it's a coffee shop in the lower level, I'll have to be compliant with the parking requirements for that occupancy, as well as the residential. But the residential is what I'd be worried about
you have to
most.
have, designated spots or,
Mhm,
for
mhm.
the renters, okay.
Yep.
We always say, what's it gonna take to make it happen? How far along the line are we, or what do you need, or what are you asking for us?
Sure. Like Ms. Nerdle had said, right now I'd be looking for the city to give approval, and I apologize if I'm not saying it correctly, but to be a pass-through agent should we go along. There's a CDI grant, a Community Development Incentive, I think that's the right, and that's out of the Wisconsin Economic Development. It's at the state level, and we're working on the Elsa Duranzo and I, and also Kristen Fish Peterson, are working on the materials for that, and the city would have to be involved in that only to give approval for it. That's kind of loosey-goosey, I understand, but again, I'd be the recipient, or really my contractors would be the recipient of it, and you would act as a pass-through agent. And again, I apologize if I'm technically not correct in that, but just so you don't think like I have a bank account out there waiting for it.
We'd have responsibility, but we probably have very little cash output on this. Is that what you're proposing?
For me, myself?
No, for the city.
Oh.
In the letter dated November 1st, it talks about what she was looking for. First of all, it dealt with the city to deal with Hope Grant, and the Hope Grant is no longer on the table. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then the other part of that was an incentive of some TID possibility funding through aid and low-interest loans if available through the city or
That's
somewhere
correct.
else.
That's correct.
How much of the TID funding are you looking for?
Well, I've heard different things. I've heard different amounts to ask for, and that also sometimes it ends up being 10%, and then 10% of what, as far as is it the total investment of the building, or a detail like that. Certainly, any contribution like that, I would just be floored with. And again, my hope is, to preserve the building always, and to really make it something the community can be proud of. I still, even after all these years, I light it up and things like that. And I already have one commercial tenant there who is just dying for all this to happen. And I would really love to have this lovely historic building come to life and to have the community enjoy it. That's really my goal. And plus make a little profit. I mean, I have to be honest. Again, not to be my sole source of income, I don't need that, but to be supplemental and to have it run, that would be a joy. And I'd love to do that hand in hand with the City of Merrill government.
Guess after you have a a better handle on what it's gonna cost to do it, and if you do get the grant, you could come back, tell us what the difference is, and we could consider at that time a portion, as far as TID help.
I have some of those specifics. I know, Ms. Inertle, is that,
If you have a ballpark of what it's going to cost to do what you proposed.
And then what
To
you're
go ahead.
applying for as far as a
It-
grant,
sure.
take the two and see what your remaining balance is, and
Mm-hmm.
we could consider that later.
Well,
I guess as far as a tenant in there now, is there somebody in there right now?
she's storing her equipment now.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know the appropriateness of, do I start talking dollars now? Is that
Well,
something?
if you have an idea of what the total cost,
Sure.
is it, what, $500,000, $2 million, what are you talking about?
Sure. And I apologize that I don't have a specific, usual, detailed quote from the contractor. That usually is what he would do. We were under a deadline again for HUD and things of that sort, so I was really pushing a contractor and my architect to really come forward with it. So he gave me a square footage quote. And the square footage quote for the whole building, again, you're looking at 2 floors, about 6,700 each floor, so right around 14,000 square feet, anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 million. I already have 600,000 invested in the building, and for the last 10 years, I've paid taxes on it in the amount of $40,000. So those are the dollar amounts that I'm looking at. And again, Ms. Fish Peterson, she's looking at the capital stacking that it would take as far as, because I don't intend for one spot to say, oh, here's all that money, And as we get further along with again, more detailed drawings, the subs will come back with a little bit more specific as far as what it's going to take. But this was a comfort level. And what I did was I looked at that and I thought, all right, is that, if you're going to build a new house now, depending upon the area of the country, you're looking at $250 to $300 a square foot. This is a building that already has, all the masonry work, all the basement. It's got the roof and things like that. So when I boiled it down and I took a look again, kind of borrowing from Swiderski at the Fox Point and just doing per square footage, it falls right in that ballpark. In fact, it's a little bit less per square foot. So if I took like that kind of equation, I'm looking at about $80 to $85 per square foot if I'm looking at just the residential part of that compared to the Swiderski, which is a little bit over 100.
And when we look at the bottom floor, we'd be looking at, job creation.
Right.
Those kind of things. So you got to
Right.
come up with kind of a business plan and actually, I won't say have tenants, but I wouldn't think we would fund it if we didn't know what was going to be in there. I'm not speaking for everybody. That's what we've done in the past. We've had to
Right.
know job creation and number of units, what you have.
Right. And I have a
some
business
more
plan.
details.
Yep, I have a business plan. I didn't distribute it because it focuses so much on the coffee shop and the commercial, where I was really starting off down this path until the residential piece came across my attention, and it was like, oh, this is what really the community needs. And even when I started talking to financial institutions, one topic came up was, what are you going to do with the second floor? And even years ago, Stacy told me what you should do is put apartments up there, and I kind of resisted, truthfully. So here I am, and I'm looking at, again, from my own side of things, to what does it take to actually run that building, and how would it be profitable? So I do have something as far as the coffee shop idea, and looking at creating probably 4 to 5 jobs. And then also a maintenance person and somebody who would be on site or near on site.
Yeah. At this point, I guess if there's no problems, if we have consensus that we could be the pass-through agent for the either federal or state grant programs, I think that's what we're looking for.
Agreed.
I think this is a great opportunity for this particular building, especially in that side of town. You know, when we've got residential apartments, and Mr. Sabathki, early on, you talked about having those types of apartments where people pay $600 or $700 a month rent.
$650 hardly exists for apartments.
And I think this would fit that particular criteria that you were looking for, but I mean, this is a great use of that space.
Thank you.
They count
And
8 apartments. You say 6 or 8 upstairs?
9.
There's 8 upstairs
And
and
one
one
downstairs.
downstairs, so 9. And when I run the numbers, just real loosely, the lady from, the individual from Redevelopment Resources, she'll do a pro forma, which is appropriate, and she actually, oddly enough, just finished a renovation of a brick hospital in Iowa, and is doing almost the same thing, and for apartments. So there's a little bit, we're state of Wisconsin, so there's some differences there, but as far as the processes, and like I said, her background and everything like that, this is my probably one and only time that I will do this, so it's good for me to bring in people who have done this before, and just how viable it is, and to just stay real with it. But when I look at it and I run real basic numbers, and usually I'm pretty right on with it. When I run the rent and things like that, I'm looking at $8,000 a month. And then if I just cost out just the basic fixed costs, I'm looking at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So between there, is really what I'm looking at as far as.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, I really do.
Thank you.
We
Yes.
talked before in our apartments, our new ones are running $1,000, $1,300.
Mhm.
And what about people in the service industry making $15 an hour?
Exactly.
So I appreciate this, these smaller efficiency apartments. And,
Thank you.
I think, we are willing to work with you, but.
That'd be
we
great.
have our financial restraints also.
Of course.
So
You
is
just
it-
had a good time about parking, I think.
Is it the consensus of the committee to move ahead with being the pass-through for the grants?
Yeah, and then update, put on an agenda for next
Yeah.
month also, just for updates.
Well, when she comes
Wasn't
back.
I would agree, from my standpoint, yes,
Okay.
that we would work through, and I don't know if you have
I
to
mean,
talk.
we can just do a consensus. No,
You
there's,
make a motion if you want.
no. You want to make a motion to, that way it's more official.
I'll make a motion to be the pass-through agent.
I'll second it. Okay.
We have a motion, a second, for the city of Merrill to be a pass-through agent. Any further discussion?
I'd like to see just one thing.
Yep.
Those efficiency apartments, the 650 ones, there's 3. There's not.
The studio apartments, yep.
Yeah.
The other ones are the one-bedroom facility.
Yeah, they're all pretty small.
Just to be
so
clear.
it's-
Yeah.
Well, yes, but you talked
And
about.
we're not having that discussion, but.
No, but you talked about tiny homes, and this is the size of a tiny home, 400 square feet,
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, which we need more of, I think, yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second and.
Question.
discussion. Yes.
Is there any, for the city to be a pass-through agent, is there any monetary cost associated with that, or we're just supporting her in this?
Just staff resources.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
I think.
Okay, next item on the agenda is update on real estate listing for Lincoln County Highway G Industrial Business Park TID 13. We have it in our packet here in front of us.
Guess if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. TJ was not able to make it here today. This is what he put together for.
This updated listing, there's no offer on it or anything.
No, this is
No,
just,
That's just
Just
the
update on-
listing that
Any
Kim-
activity on it?
there's some interest.
Some interest? Okay. Nothing to talk about yet? Okay.
no.
Is there a formal listing at this point?
Yes.
okay.
I just wanted to make you aware of it and see if you had any questions on how it was presented and how it's advertised.
Anybody have any questions on it? Anything? I think it's being marketed very well. I think that him and his real estate partners are very aggressive in marketing, and I appreciate that very much.
One observation, Mr. Chairman, that'd be a heck of a place to put a billboard we could see from the highway. We have our marketing people here.
We had talked about the southbound. There is one up on the Peterson property, just to the, on the northeast corner there, and there is opportunity for another one just before you get into the Pines, and we've talked about that.
Okay, yeah, so I think we should, Merrill next right, next left, whatever. Yeah. Or when the property's sold, we'd have that grandfathered in that we would be able to keep the billboard.
I see this property probably being sold in 10-acre, 5-acre increments versus
Okay.
all 64, but.
So have our marketing people keep that on the
Yep.
charts anyway. Start designing it.
All right, we'll move on to update on Cedar Corp site development grant opportunities, 401 Kai Street, TID number 9.
We've been working with Cedar Corp on updating the Phase 1 and Phase 2. What this entails is investigating the ground there to make sure there's no contamination. This was done back in, I do believe, 2011 or so, when Anson Gilkey was tore down. At that time, the concentration was where the building was and not along Kai Street, which borders the Semco property, which has contamination. So the Cedar Corp and their Cedar Corp, I think Enterprise it's called, they would like to develop there, and they're working with us to do a new Phase 1 and Phase 2. The DNR wants one that's 5 years or less as far as the age of the studies. So we're waiting to hear back from the DNR, and we've been having monthly meetings, I would say, with Cedar Corp as far as progress. After Phase 1 and Phase 2 are completed, there's some other brownfield site assessment grants, some other preparations of a new East Side waterfront plan, initiative redevelopment plan. There was one, again, that was probably from around 2010, which was for the riverfront. At that time, a plan was made around the businesses, but now that these are gone and we have some development there, probably time to update these plans. And if you look on the timeline, these first two are in 2024. The riverfront plan would be in 25, and then as far as any remediation necessary, there would probably be WEDC idle site redevelopment grant that we would be applying for as far as any remediation necessary, and then any infrastructure to facilitate putting up what they're proposing at this time. It's they have a couple different ideas, but that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and probably with certain economic activities over the next 2 years, at least we be prepared. If there is a recession in the next 2 years, we'd be prepared coming out of it.
Are you prepared to tell the public what kind of buildings are being considered for that property?
There's been a couple different ideas, and at this point, I don't think it really is pertinent to what we're talking about. It's
Okay, public isn't ready to be aware of this.
Cedar Corp has talked about a couple different things. They've
Okay.
talked about 120 units there. They've talked about some other ideas there.
Yeah.
We put it out for different ideas also that we've received back, some things which we rejected in this group. So at that time, we decided to go with Cedar Corp, and I think they've been doing a good job. I don't know if you want to add to that, Mayor?
Yeah, I think that they've been doing their due diligence on this and keeping us informed, and like Rod said, we meet at least every month, if not a little bit more than that once in a while, so.
And they have their investment groups in place to back it.
They're waiting for all this stuff first before they move forward with any other plan.
Please pass on to them, if you already haven't, that They're brushing out to extend the Riverbend Trail all the way to Big Eddy.
I'm sure that they,
They know that already?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be advantage for that structure there to have that Riverbend Trail extended.
so,
It's just an update. I think you've seen, there have been a couple developments in Milwaukee that really have flagged the need to make sure that the environmental and potential vapor issues are taken care of for environmental.
all right, we'll move on to review of 2024 tax increment district budget requests.
Okay, if you have copies of the budgets, if you want to go through them quickly, we're in a different phase for the tax incremental district, so we're winding down. We kind of talked about that from the information that Brian Riley from Ellers has provided. On page T1, after the map, we only have about $185,000 of cash development incentives that are scheduled for 2024. That does include 30,000, potential 3 for the Wendorf development. We're kind of winding down on all of these. Going on page T2, I'm going to start with TID number 10, Fox Point. Basically, we're just paying for the infrastructure for 2023, and for 2024, paying debt service down. Moving on to page T4, TID 11, Rockridge Apartments, Highway 107. Basically, JJ Premier has started the basement on the last lot that they have, so that anticipate that'll be paid out in 2024. And then other than that, it's basically debt service. We did a lot of infrastructure payments for 2023. If you have questions, yell. Page.
So, Ms.
Yeah.
Ingersoll, so underneath, when it says the budget change, that's from from 2023, correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Moving on to TID 12, wine runner area. Basically, we're just continuing this year. I'm assuming that the streetlights are going in, right, Ron? On Riverside Avenue?
We're hoping to accomplish that in 2024, yes.
Oh, you think it's going to be 2024? It's not happening this year?
Correct.
Okay, so that's,
So then when you talk about the revenue side of things where it shows $200,000, that's borrowed funds, correct? It
what
says
page are you looking at?
Page 36 or T4. It talks about proceeds long-term debt. In other words, that's borrowed funds to help put those projects together, the streetlights and things, underneath the second
No,
line.
for TID 11, I guess I'm at,
Yeah,
I may have an
I'm
error.
on TID 11, yes. The second line, we've got the property tax of 236,061, the very first line under revenues,
and I guess I'm going to say that I probably have a mistake there.
because it shows $200,000.
Yeah, but I don't have any $200,000 expenses. Basically, I think it should be zero.
So then the total taxes and revenues for that shows 452, which is some of the state aid that has been applied to this.
You have basically tax increment coming in, which is the bulk of it, and you have state personal property, and basically it should be $252,000 of revenue. Then you have administrative expenses, the JJ Premier, and then debt service. Payments
Which is
to
the
debt service.
$160,000 that shows on page 37 or
Yeah.
T5, correct?
Yeah, so basically, you have more revenue coming in than expenses for that one, if you correct the 200,000. And there will be some occasional errors as we go through here, so.
No, I understand, I'm just asking some
A
questions.
lot of numbers. Thank you for
There
asking.
are.
Basically, I guess, as noted on the top, the cover page, the 2023 borrowing is going to happen next year for the 2023 expenses. There was too much going on. Page T6, as Rod just indicated, the streetlights are first going to go in 2024. So I'll shift that number to 2024 on Riverside. TID 3, the main TID, at this point, basically, all you're doing is passing money through for debt service, which is on page T8. Total debt service is almost $800,000. There'll be about $200,000 to transfer to TID number 8. So, and we're looking at closing that, I mean, basically, that's scheduled per our previous discussions. We'll be closing down after April 15th, 2026. And so the tax base will be back there for 2027. Okay, moving on to TID 4, Pine Ridge Plaza area. Basically, we get tax increment coming in, that's shown on page T9. We about $200,000 of revenue. We have debt service for that, and we're transferring money to TID number 9. That's $50,000 estimated. And we'll, in closed session, we'll be talking about the potential sale of the 2-acre site.
If I may ask, what's the intergovernmental aids? I know it says computer aid and then state PP aid. Is that personal property?
PP is personal property.
Okay, so those are tax dollars that come in?
Those are coming from the state of Wisconsin, those are state of
Right,
Wisconsin.
to this, to
Yeah.
this particular TID?
Yeah.
Okay,
You have that pretty much for every TID.
yep.
TID number 5, we anticipate closing after April 15th, 2024, have a resolution to close this TID down and close it down early. And basically, all we're doing is covering administrative costs and debt service. Okay, moving on to the downtown, TID number 6. That's on page T12. We've now generating over $100,000. It's revenue for this TID. We have administrative expenses, and then the bulk of it is really repaying the general fund advances. Moving on to page T14, TID number 7. That's the $600,000 of potential borrowings related to Spruce Street. If that project proceeds for utilities and gravel base, you have, and all of that, kind of the expenses in terms of public works, engineer is tied to that, and then you have that on page T15, about $600,000 for infrastructure investment. Any questions on that one?
And then that would be based upon what I've read in here is the initial gravel base and the water and sewer going through there in 2025 or 2026 is where we put the blacktop and curb and gutter
Correct.
things in, correct? Okay.
Correct.
I have a question. You said that the expenses are all for 2023, but that wouldn't be happening
No,
this year.
expenses are for 2024.
Before you said, did I hear that wrong?
Borrowing is gonna,
The
the borrowing for 2023 is gonna occur in 2024, early beginning of the
Okay.
year. We'll probably do combined borrowing for the actual 2023 and for 2024.
Okay.
It's, okay, if not, moving on to TID 8, and the fiscal picture for this one has dramatically changed with Webster Street. Basically, page T16, we're looking at transferring both from 23 and 24 over $200,000 to that TID, which will help repay the general fund advances. We'll have borrowing, the borrowing for 2023 will be less than what was budgeted. And then looking at it, I have one correction on page T17. The Brooks School of Dance is not $30,000, it's $35,000. And that was paid last week. As the project is, the building's been occupied now, so. Okay, moving on, I guess the last page of that for,
So then, would there be a $35,000 cost in 2024 also?
no, it's
It's just a
zero.
one-time,
one time. We just had one obligation there. And then page T18, the parking lot, the former Lincoln County Bank, Lincoln Community Bank site, $60,000 for that infrastructure.
Are we doing the parking lot on the other side of the alley also?
Yeah, it was $30,000
On
for
both
each
of
side
them.
of the alley.
It was on both of them. So then, based upon the budgets, in my mind, and correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at, the TIDs are looking at borrowing roughly $800,000?
No, actually, we haven't got to TID number 9. That's where the bulk of the money is.
I'm sorry. You're correct. That was $1.1 million there.
Yeah. Page T20 is TID 9. The two major infrastructure projects there are O'Day Street, which is in serious need of improvements, and then the South Center Avenue, basically from Brugner's Carriers to Joe Snow Road, right, Ron?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's,
There's probably 1,500 feet of curb and gutter we'll take out and replace at that time also.
so basically that's the infrastructure listed on pages T21 corresponding. And we have some debt service, and for the first time, there will be tax increment. I anticipate, I'm not sure what the timing is, Plant Garden Center, their storage building, we have an obligation of about $10,000 for that project. And we do have one pending project right now, and that's related to the former hotel at the corner of O'Day and South Center Avenue. Through litigation, the city now has, well, the city has title. We've litigated the delinquent tax foreclosure process, and we'll be proceeding to demolish the building.
Tom, can you give us an update on where we are with that?
Roughly, there'd be about 30 days left of the time period that the guy who thinks he owns the property would have to appeal certain court's decision, which basically affirms the tax foreclosure process, which Lincoln County took care of. So things are moving in the right direction.
And as the footnote on that page, same page, T21 shows, we are still waiting for the IRS lien to be released on the former Page Milk building.
And next year, the time should be right to once again pursue that.
I mean, all these development things take a long time, so sometimes longer than you want. Okay, page T22 is the industrial park, which is now listed with a broker, so at this point, I have not built anything in there. If something happens, you'll have to amend the budget. And the last page of the budget, T23, is the car wash and cup and cone.
So
Okay.
let me correct my previous statement. The amount looking to borrow for the TIDs is roughly $1.7, $1.8 million. Is that correct?
Ballpark, yeah.
Ballpark numbers. And of that, roughly $1.1 million of that would be for street improvements out in Joe Snow, or out in that area there. And then $600,000 for the Wendorf, for that property there if it goes through. Correct.
If it goes.
Okay. And then on page in the packet of number 30, which is an overview of everything that you've talked about, and I believe this is what Mr. Bars was looking at before, is some sort of a spreadsheet that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bars, but I mean, of what the budgets are and where the payments are coming from and everything else. It shows that, with the exception of TID number 11, instead of 452, that's 252, because you had that $200,000 error in there, correct?
Right.
And so with that, that's a minus $400,000 from the previous budget of 2023 instead of $200,000. It shows that we've got the ability to make all of the payments that are necessary with all of the revenue that's coming in.
Correct.
Yeah, and I guess at this point, as the footnote also indicates, I have not been able to calculate what the actual tax increment is, so I just use the same numbers,
Yep.
and
Yep.
as soon as I can,
Yep.
as soon as I get the technical college, well, I got the technical college levy, I just need the maps and the county, and then I can pretty much plug a number, accurately number it.
That's based upon what we know today.
Right,
Now, in 6 months, somebody might come in and say, I need some money for the industrial park if it gets sold, from a TID development standpoint, and we may have to revisit this, as an example.
right.
Okay.
I mean, I think the key thing is we're moving into a different cycle on these TIDs. We're proceeding to plan on closing them, moving toward the closure, and we're repaying the general fund advances. So things are happening.
And that's the important thing, paying back those general fund advances and using the TID area to borrow the funds instead of using the city itself to borrow the funds for some of this infrastructure improvement.
And I've said it many times before, you know, if we did borrow from the general fund for these TIDs, but these TIDs have been doing
Yep.
several $1 million worth of street infrastructure
Yep.
that would have had to come from the general side.
Yep.
And I think we're way ahead by having the TIDs with, especially on the infrastructure side of things.
Plus, you're basically making improvements that will help other tax base, especially commercial areas and new residential developments.
And
That
if-
wouldn't happen without the investments.
And if we had them from the general fund improvements, that would increase the mill rate, if you will, to all the constituents within the city of Merrill versus this TID particular area here. Correct?
Would it be possible to get this document with the accurate numbers? I know there's some mistakes in there.
There will be summary for the council. I will have my summary information for each of these TIDs. I just didn't have time to do that.
Well, I know you had some.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if we can just have.
Yeah,
get that
we'll have the final version will be for the council meeting on the 14th.
And some of these TIDs also are paying for some of the wages of administrative people within the city itself, too.
Right.
Okay, which is an important part of it also, in my mind.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, I know this is, and there's a, Mr. Sabathia, you can answer this too, but was this approved at the budget hearing? This budget?
So far.
Initially, it has gotten through the
We-
initial response, initial
Correct.
one, and the budget's gonna be passed here in the next few weeks, I believe,
The
correct?
14th, yep.
Nothing alarming.
No, I understand that, but this has gone through common council and everything has been
Yep.
approved that way.
Correct. So
Okay.
far, so good.
Thank you.
I have a question. So, like, the Wendorf thing hasn't gone through because we don't have the agreement thing. So when that goes through, that's not in this budget. How
No,
does,
It is.
It
it's
is.
approved. It was.
there was
it was-
30,000. I didn't see.
That's
It
the
is.
development per 3 houses on, there's $600,000 for Spruce Street.
In 2024,
Oh, I
it
didn't
shows
see this.
that, and it also shows borrowing $600,000 for this, for the infrastructure.
Okay.
And obviously, if it doesn't happen, nothing will happen, it won't be spent.
Then we won't borrow for it.
I thought the discussion was like, wasn't like 200,000 for the street, and then part of that was the incentive for the houses. I thought 600 was the whole thing, or
600 was the whole street.
Capital, I mean,
Capital.
Capital outlet for spruce.
just to update the
sewer,
street.
sewer, water,
And gravel base.
base, and we are, the water line that goes from 14th Street to the paper mill now is from 1906, and that thing is, I don't know if it's leaking or not, but we need to replace that and loop all that for water quality.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next RDA meeting, which is Wednesday, December 6th at 8 a.m. That work for everyone? Next, we'll go into, for closed session, the RDA may convene into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 1985, Sub 1, Sub E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever a competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session to consider. During that closed session, we'll consider negotiation of potential TID development incentives for facilitating future redevelopment of the Mathis building, and negotiation of potential sales terms for city-owned vacant lot to facilitate new commercial development TID for southeast corner Pine Ridge Plaza. Do I hear a motion to enter into closed session?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Ms. Nerdo, would you call the roll, please?
Haas,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Bars.
Aye.
Zabaki,
Aye.
Rutkowski. Hartwig,
Aye.
Kusaro.
Aye.
Carried 7-0, Mayor.
Thank you.
And